Well, hello, I'm Kevin Kyler, President of Environmental Inspection Dynamics. Now, many times I'm asked by a client after doing a full environmental mold inspection with air tests, where is it? Meaning, where's the mold hiding and why do I still feel so lousy? So I decided to write this abridged version of the original presentation so others in the field can understand minor issues can have major consequences. It has 15 slides, most are annotated pictures. The shortened conclusion will astound you. Well, we're going to start off with my personal story here. However, I'm not going to read every point, just the ones I think that really matter. Now, there at the top, it states, these are some of the facts on deledescent, and I'd like to add to that deleterious or hidden mold. Simply meaning what's hidden can hurt you, and you'll see at the end, or you will get it. Now at the bottom, that's also very important, number 5. Finding dry and hidden mold is best done with non-viable air spore trap impact testing, otherwise known as volumetric testing. So let's get to the job site and start outside. But first, a little bit about this client. We'll give her an alias name, Joan Jones. Actually, her first name is Joan. She's a divorcee. He has 2 teenage children living with her. Just bought and moved into the subject townhouse. Is feeling chronically ill since she's moved into the property. She has a pet cat and a dog, of which both are experiencing ailments, and also her children. While inside, she states that something smells funny. At the point of our survey, they have only been in the subject property for 3 weeks. The property has undergone remodeling. I call it fix and flips, and I mean that in a negative sense, as you will see. This, as you can see, is the exterior, so let's expand a little bit on this. As you can see, it has a gable-type shed roof. Important to note that that front slope of that roof is, on the inside, is vaulted, all right? Basically, this is a 2-story. However, there are 4 levels in this property, and the basement area, it would be considered a daylight basement area. So when I got there, I saw this, and I said, Joan, you do need to close those windows. We need to take air spore trap impact tests. On these arrows that I'm bringing in, very important, I took this picture standing on the slope of the property where it goes up to a 4-lane street. At that point, I couldn't even see the curbs. So, I'm approximately 4 feet up, as stated here, and it should come to mind what's going to happen in heavy rainfall, and move it to winter. What's going to happen when you have snow and ice melt off? Where in the world is that water going to go? Okay, I'm moving down here. Basically, this is at the front of the subject townhome, and realize that, again, this is a basic 2-story, but this is like the 3rd level. What's very important is that upper left-hand picture, where I annotated that, the area of prior event stain leak signatures. You could see moisture drips down the wall. Very important, as you're going to see later. Now, to understand, as you look to the lower part there where it says front bedroom, I'm doing what's called comparative value moisture meter scan. Well, there's 2 levels on the meter. The top is for what's called wood, and the bottom is called comparative or relative, and that's for moisture content. So what I did here is, to make sure that I'm getting a proper reading, I put that moisture meter first by the doorway where I know there's no moisture there. But I moved it here, as you can see where I placed it. It moved to 15% EMC. So what's EMC mean? Equilibrium moisture content. So what's going on here is that at 15% is the threshold point where there's enough weight of moisture in the wood to support mold or microbial growth. Very important. Now, moving over to where you see living room north wall. I'm using the meter again, but this time in that lower scale on a comparative value. Now, I placed that meter on a different area, or several different areas, and it came up 0 to 10% where drywall should be. So I moved it here by this plug, and wow, it moved up to 100% MC. That's definitely above normal. And also, there's a patching event going on there. So I'm saying there is something going on with this so-called fix and flip. So let's move down to the basement. In this particular area is the laundry room. First, in the upper left, the floor drain should not be sealed. Do you know what happens if a solenoid control valve jams open on a device such as the washing machine? It will make that basement a swimming pool. In the upper right, improper dryer vent connection should be in 4-inch galvanized pipe. Why in the world are they using a flexible going through interstitial areas? That's a no-no. Down in the middle, this is a problem here. Where you see the control valves and a DWV right above the washing machine, I put the probe meter in there. It came up at 70%. And I also noticed that that was patched as well. It is starting to raise my curiosity. What is going on with this so-called fix and flip? This is how I present my air sport trap samplings and the acquired locations. As you can see, going from left to right, I did the top floor, the front bedroom, the lower level, and the outside control. One thing of note, in the lower level 3, where you see that door is, the other side of that door, by the way, is a very small utility room. It's about 5 by 6, has the furnace, has the hot water heater, has the water meter, and the power panel. This is kind of where the problems really start, as you're going to see. But what I want to note to you is that that device that you see on the floor in orange is called a hygrometer. I take hygrometer readings at each location, including the outside. As you peruse through that, you can see, well, they're pretty much the same, not too much difference going on. And then I also give the averaged interior hygrometer readings. I feel this is the only way they should be presented, and I feel this is the right way and the way it should be done. At this point, I'm done, and these are my thoughts on the ride home. Meaning, well, what happened and where are we going to go with this? So, there's something going on in this subject property. What? Strange prior sales, strange prior owners. Joan filled me with an earful of things. I didn't like what I was hearing. Rehabs that could have been cover-ups. We'll see. Townhome complex was built in the 1970s. What were the codes back then? Why is this area so low compared to the 4-lane street that it backs up to, as you saw in the prior picture? Are the client's symptoms reported or are they bona fide? Could she have ongoing symptoms of COVID-19? Remember, we're in the middle of a COVID crisis here. Anxious to get those lab results. Will they be low, moderate, or high? What about our children's symptoms? And for that matter, what about the pets? Past leakage events. Some surface stain signatures are present. What you saw was just one area. There were others. Ongoing smells. Well, it's hard to detect under masks. Are the neighbors next door having the same problems? I beckoned Joan to go ask them and see for herself. And then, where are we going with this? What about invasive sampling and assessments under remediation protocols? You better add to that under proper professional remediation protocols of containment. You don't want to do invasives unless you're in that containment, because you have no idea what you're going to open up in that wall, no idea of the health level of your client, and you're going to open up a mess of things you don't want to see. These are my mold test findings. Now, I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm just going to read the important and the highlighted stuff. So let's take a look at this. Make things a little easier. I'm going to try to pull up the laser pointer. Okay, that's better. Anyway, as you can see here at the top, it shows the 4 test locations of which you saw in the previous picture. It shows that the report that came back from the lab shows low growth to moderate growth. I'm going, this is not what I was expecting. That particular area was showed low. Now let's get the important part right about here in the air sample summary when it refers to moderate. Now, what I'm showing you here, what's highlighted is actually cut and pasted right out of the mold report from Eurofins MLab P&K. So I'm going to read that. If mold growth is found, regardless of the magnitude of growth, it is recommended that the growth be physically removed using appropriate controls and precautions. If the mold has been located and removed, it is also important to identify and correct the source of moisture or dampness that allowed the mold to grow. If the affected area becomes moist again, the mold growth will occur again. At the bottom there, and I just want to read this part, it says, please note that the moderate range begins at a mold score of 150 and goes to 250. They only hit 159, so that's not that quite big of a deal. So moving on. Well, what they found here is important in the marker spore indicating area on that under what they call D. They found Stachybotrys. You do not want to mess with that mold. This is important, I write that in. These molds are considered wet type or water damage, building damage indicators. Molds that can grow well on wood, carpet, and especially on the backside of wet, damp drywall, you're going to see, in lower levels such as basements and crawl spaces or anywhere there is significant moisture intrusion. Look what it states over here. It says the lab counted 10 to 38 spores trapped in the spore, what's called spores per cubic meter. Those scores were 116 and 159. It doesn't seem like a big deal. We'll keep moving on here. This is important, and again, what I'm going to read to you is cut and pasted right out of the mold report. States, consequently, their presence indoors, even in relatively low numbers compared to penicillium, for example, is often an indication that these molds are originating from growth indoors. When present, these molds are often the clearest indicator of a mold problem. Yep, it sure is. Mold found with Stachybotrys. I just put down the characteristics. You saw this before. Yeah, I gave them the hygrometer readings. This just explains about the mold score, and that's it. That's basically the entire mold report that went back to her. This is my conversation with the client after all of the reports were received by her. And by the way, the client decided to go with the remediator I recommended. Oh, I'm glad she did. She stated that they still felt malaise when at the property. Malaise simply means a medical term. You don't feel well and you don't know why. The odors were still present. I told her that in order to confirm suspicions, invasive actions are required under, again, proper professional remediation protocols of containment. The first area of remediation should be in the basement area. There the remediators would cut the 1, 2, and 4 foot upcuts into the drywall to determine the extent of the growth. If the remediators discover cover-ups, then legal advice should be sought. Well, change of color on the slide. That should alarm you that something's coming. What the remediator found of record. The basement utility closet was just the start of this. The exterior wall construction, in my terms, was just plain stupid. Problems were in and on all floors. Mold can play a dangerous game of hide and seek. Remember Delicent and Deleterious? If this happened to this client's unit, what about the others? I dare say there's probably anywhere from 36 to 48 units in this complex. Should the client seek legal action? Yes, if she has a smoking gun and that video was taken by the remediator of record. As said, you'll want to see? Pretty sure you do. As said, this is not going to be good, so let's take a look. Remediators always start at the base first, and what they pulled off, indeed, that's not good. By the way, the remediator there told me this definitely is a cover-up. Okay, moving on. This is at the 2 foot mark as shown. As it swivels in, as the question beckons, this is not good. If you, with a client and the remediator, as they're doing the work, opened the wall and invited you to see this, What would your thoughts be? Now, what's important about this is, as stated, do you think there are any problems in on the top floors? This is going to relate to that area you saw where I was using the moisture meters by that window. So let's take a look at this. All right. First thing you see is that, stated, rafter soffit pockets, signs of prior ice damming. What you're seeing in that wall is where the studs are. The insulation was removed. What you're seeing there is the backside of drywall. Yes, they did use drywall for exterior sheathing. And look at it closely. Yes, that's mold growth occurring on the drywall. So now, you remember about those stain leakage signatures that we talked about? It's all starting to come around. Okay, care to guess what the interior drywall on the exterior walls looks like? First, a note of importance here. Mold's preferential food is cellulose, meaning anything derived from wood, from framed lumber all the way down to paper. So let's look at this. On the left, that's the backside of the paper on the drywall. And what you're seeing on the right is the paper face of the insulation. And take a look at what's on those studs. Kind of an interesting pattern here, huh, of the mold. Remember what I said about delicescent and deleterious? What do you think now? Okay, so we're at the closing, and I posted some questions, but now, from what you just saw, do you understand why I pay attention to all the client's remarks? The sad part of all this is that the client gets stuck holding the bag. This is why I feel personally about conveying all this information to you. So let's go close out with these. Now, if you were the client and finding out what you just saw, what would you do? Would you continue staying there with your family? Would you begin to seek legal advice and actions? Do you see how important listening is? Do you realize what you might be called into in this area of the building sciences arena? Now do you understand why I pounded into you delicescent and deleterious when it means when it comes to mold, especially with the marker spore indicators you saw in those reports being that low? You're not going to find this in the books. Sometimes your experience really counts. Look, I'm not trying to toot my horn, but I've been down the road a little bit and I've seen a lot of things. This one really affected me. Thanks for watching.